The courtroom didn't make a sound when the old woman lifted her trembling hand. Not a cough, not a whisper, just the scraping tension of breaths being held. Then she did it, a subtle twitch of her fingers, barely noticeable. The German shepherd. At her feet stood up with military precision, ears forward, eyes locked on the man at the witness stand. And in one terrifying, perfect moment, he lunged. The bailiff moved too late. Chairs toppled. A scream tore through the air. But the shepherd didn't go for the man's throat, no. He went for something far stranger. He dove at the man's briefcase. A split second later, the latch popped open, and papers exploded out like a magician's trick. Only these weren't papers. Photos. Dozens of them. Glossy. Full color. The man's voice cracked into a strangled curse. The judge yelled for order. The crowd surged to their feet. But the courtroom was no longer a place of law. It had turned into a circus of gasps, clicking cameras, and dropped jaws. Because scattered across the floor were images no one could explain. Children, bruised, bound. Terrified, and in the corner of each photo a date stamp, some over a decade old. The man tried to speak, tried to claim it was a setup, but the dog growled. A low, guttural sound not even the bravest dared to challenge. Then the woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm, cold. "You always said they were accidents, Gerald." The entire courtroom froze. The man, Gerald, stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "You weren't supposed to—" She stood, slowly, bones creaking, wrinkled hands gripping the rail. "This dog remembers what I can't forget. And today he speaks for them." The judge banged the gavel. Too late, because what no one knew, what not even the dog had revealed yet, was this. The old woman wasn't just a witness. She was the mother of one of the children in the photos, and Gerald, he wasn't just a man on trial. He was the retired detective who closed the original case, the one who said there was no foul play, no crime, no suspects. Just an unfortunate disappearance. And now the courtroom was drowning in a truth that had been buried for 22 years. As officers scrambled to secure the scene, the dog nudged a final photo toward the old woman. She picked it up and gasped, because the child in that photo was not one of the missing. It was her granddaughter, who was never supposed to exist. And standing in the back row of the courtroom, watching it all unfold, was a girl with the same eyes, the same birthmark, the same scar, and she was crying not from fear, but because she knew everything, and she'd come to finish what the dog started. Absolutely. Here's part 1 of your suspense-driven story script, crafted for maximum emotional punch and cinematic tension. Part 1. Old woman signals her German shepherd. The courtroom freezes in shock. Powerful hook, 500 words. Immediate suspense. Plus, mind-blowing loop. The courtroom didn't make a sound when the old woman lifted her trembling hand. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Just the scraping tension of breaths being held. Then she did it. A subtle twitch of her fingers, barely noticeable. The German shepherd at her feet stood up with military precision. Ears forward, eyes locked on the man at the witness stand. And in one terrifying, perfect moment, he lunged. The bailiff moved too late. Chairs toppled. A scream tore through the air, but the shepherd didn't go for the man's throat. No, he went for something far stranger. He dove at the man's briefcase. A split second later, the latch popped open, and papers exploded out like a magician's trick. Only these weren't papers. Photos. Dozens of them. Glossy. Full color. The man's voice cracked into a strangled curse. The judge yelled for order. The crowd surged to their feet. But the courtroom was no longer a place of law. It had turned into a circus of gasps, clicking cameras, and dropped jaws. Because scattered across the floor were images no one could explain. Children, bruised, bound. Terrified, and in the corner of each photo a date stamp, some over a decade old. The man tried to speak, tried to claim it was a setup, but the dog growled. A low, guttural sound not even the bravest dared to challenge. Then the woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm, cold. You always said they were accidents, Gerald. The entire courtroom froze. The man, Gerald, stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "You weren't supposed to—" She stood, slowly, bones creaking, wrinkled hands gripping the rail. "This dog remembers what I can't forget. And today he speaks for them." The judge banged the gavel. Too late, because what no one knew, what not even the dog had revealed yet, was this. The old woman wasn't just a witness. She was the mother of one of the children in the photos, and Gerald, he wasn't just a man on trial. He was the retired detective who closed the original case, the one who said there was no foul play, no crime, no suspects, just an unfortunate disappearance. And now the courtroom was drowning in a truth that had been buried for 22 years. Mini cliffhanger. As officers scrambled to secure the scene, the dog nudged a final photo toward the old woman. She picked it up and gasped, because the child in that photo was not one of the missing. It was her granddaughter, who was never supposed to exist, and standing in the back row of the courtroom watching it all unfold was a girl with the same eyes, the same birthmark, the same scar, and she was crying not from fear, but because she knew everything, and she'd come to finish what the dog started. She used to forget her own name sometimes, not in the way old people do, but like it was safer to not have a name, safer to be no one, safer to forget. Eleanor Ray Bennett, once a brilliant behavioral analyst, mother of two, wife, to a man who never came home from Afghanistan. She hadn't always looked like a ghost walking, but grief is a slow eraser. It doesn't snatch things away, it scrapes them off, one memory at a time. And the first to go was her daughter. Not in memory, in life. It was the summer of 2003. Her youngest, Lila, had been missing for 6 days, 6 days of searching, 6 days of screaming her name until her voice tore into rags. Then Gerald came, Detective Gerald Masters. His badge gleamed, his words soothed, his report final. "No signs of foul play," he said. "Most likely wandered off. Possibly drowned." Eleanor remembered the way he never looked her in the eye when he said it, the way he hurried the interview, the way he told her not to prolong the pain. But Lila had never gone near water. She was terrified of it. And Eleanor? She was trained to read people for a living, and something about Gerald had stunk like smoke under perfume. Still, as she let it go, what else could she do? She was barely surviving, barely breathing. And then came the letters, the fake condolences, the staged memorials, the silence. She would have faded away completely if not for the dog, a rescue German shepherd, found half-starved and hiding beneath a freeway overpass a year after Lila vanished. Eleanor had adopted him because of his eyes, sharp, sad, unblinking. She named him Bear. She didn't know then what he'd witnessed, didn't know who he used to belong to, didn't know he was the last living thread to a truth that had been swallowed whole. It started small, Bear barking at the news when Gerald's face appeared. Years later, during his promotion to chief of police, refusing to enter certain buildings, snarling at photographs Eleanor didn't even recognize until she looked closely and saw shadows. Faces in the background, patterns. Bear wasn't just a dog, he was a compass, and he'd been pointing in the same direction for a decade, straight toward Gerald, straight toward the secrets no one believed. Not even Eleanor. At first. She'd been sleepwalking through grief for 22 years, but the moment Bear lunged in that courtroom, the moment the truth spilled out like blood from a burst vein, she remembered everything. The late-night visits, the strange phone calls, the sudden loss of evidence, how Gerald had seemed so invested in her family's pain because he was the one who curated it. The girl in the courtroom, the one who looked like Lila, was still watching her, eyes wide. Jaw clenched, hands shaking, and Eleanor couldn't stop staring. That face, how could she exist? She never knew Lila had a child, never saw a baby bump, never heard a single word. Unless Unless Gerald hadn't just covered up the case, unless he'd taken everything. Now Eleanor's mind was racing in 1,000 directions. Bear stood by her feet, alert but not aggressive, waiting, like he knew the next move wasn't his to make, like he knew what she needed to do, but Eleanor didn't move because that girl in the back, the girl with... Lila's eyes was walking toward her now, not scared, not shy, not unsure, like she had waited her whole life for this moment, and the first words out of her mouth weren't, "I'm your granddaughter." They were, "You're not crazy. I found the tapes." Eleanor staggered back. Bear growled low. "Tapes? What tapes?" Eleanor sat on the motel bed, knees locked, hands shaking. The tapes sat in front of her in a dented lunchbox, Sesame Street stickers peeling at the corners. Lila's from childhood. The girl, her alleged granddaughter, had retrieved them from a crawl space beneath a condemned farmhouse 30 miles. Outside the city. She called it home with air quotes and a hard swallow. Her name was May 17, fierce, fragile, and haunted. She hadn't said much since the courtroom. Just 3 things. He used to make her talk into the camera. He said no one would believe her. You need to hear what she said before she disappeared. Eleanor hadn't cried in 14 years. Until now. She expected screams on the tape. Fear, desperation. But what she heard first was laughter. A child's voice. Giddy. Giggling. Then another voice. Older. Calm. Her voice. She was reading a story. Once upon a time there was a girl who could never sleep because she could hear people's lies through the walls. Lila's voice interrupted. Like the man downstairs? Eleanor flinched. The room on the tape fell quiet. Then her own voice replied, "We don't talk about him." She didn't remember this conversation. Not at all. But Bear, resting by her leg, lifted his head. His ears flicked. He remembered. For the next few tapes, the timeline grew jagged. Lila's voice matured. She was older, 10, 11, maybe 12. The laughter faded. Her voice changed. Lower. Numb. There were gaps between recordings. Weeks. Then months. And then... one tape labeled in smeared ink. "If I don't come back." Eleanor's hand trembled as she clicked play. Lila's voice was steady, but something in it felt rehearsed. "If you're listening to this, I think he's going to kill me. Or make me disappear, like the others. Silence. It's not just Gerald, it's the whole damn town. He delivers them to someone. For money." I heard him say the word shipment. I think it means us. More silence, a breath. "There's a room under the police station, like a bunker, but it's not on any blueprints. He keeps tape cut, just static." May looked pale. Her eyes darted toward the window. "He's not working alone," she whispered. "You know that, right?" Eleanor nodded. She did know, but hearing it made it real. Suddenly, everything about Gerald's investigation clicked. The rushed statements, missing reports, the body that was never found, just a child's torn jacket and a blood-stained sneaker. It was a stage. They never looked for her daughter because they knew where she was. Eleanor remembered Bear's first outburst. Back in 2013, she had taken him with her to the courthouse for emotional support. A therapy dog. When Gerald passed them in the hallway, Bear lost it, snarling, foaming, trying to leap over the banister. Eleanor had dismissed it, said it was trauma, PTSD. But now she saw it differently. Bear had recognized him. Reveal. The photo that shouldn't exist. May pulled something from her bag, folded, faded, a photograph. Taken inside what looked like a basement. In it, a man in police uniform, Gerald, smiling. Arms slung around a girl in a torn dress. The girl was May. She was no older than 7. "You told me my mum was dead," she said, voice breaking. "But she was there. She tried to protect me, and when she fought back, they took her." She pointed to the corner of the photo. A mirror, cracked and just visible in the reflection. Lila bound to a radiator, eyes swollen, lip bleeding, staring straight into the lens. Loop, she never died. Eleanor felt her soul drop through the floor. She had grieved for a daughter who hadn't died. She had buried an empty coffin. She had whispered, apologies to Soil. Leela didn't die that summer. She was held, hidden, silenced. The dog knew. Bear stood up again, pacing, alert. Eleanor looked at May. "Why now?" she asked. "Why tell me all this now?" May hesitated, then reached into her jacket and pulled out a crumpled letter, scrawled in red pen, blocky, frantic. "They found me. I don't have long. But I saw her. She's still alive. Basement under the old rec center. 4th door. Use the dog. He knows. Signed." May whispered, "She sent it to me a week ago." Eleanor and May drove through the night. Rain sliced against the windshield. The old rec center hadn't been used in 15 years. They found the side door pried open. No lights. Just the smell of mold and concrete rot. Bear led, not sniffing. Guided. He turned left. Then down a staircase neither of them would have noticed. May gripped Eleanor's arm. There shouldn't be a basement. There was 4th door on the left. Just like the letter said. Bear scratched once, then twice, then stopped, ears forward. Eleanor reached for the handle. And the door opened from the inside. Standing there, eyes sunken, hair grey, lips split, was Lila, alive, barely. Lila stared at them both, then at Bear, and whispered something that shattered everything. "You shouldn't have come." Behind them, footsteps, heavy, intentional. The door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. Locked. Buckle up. This is where the story fakes. The ending, only to pull the rug harder than ever. The second the door slammed shut behind them, Eleanor knew it wasn't over. Lila didn't move. Her skin was pale, her arms trembling, but her eyes weren't pleading for help. They were warning. Them. "Is someone up there?" Eleanor whispered. Lila shook her head. "No," she rasped. "Something is." Bear turned slowly, placing himself between them and the stairs. His fur bristled. Above them, silence. Then came a click. Metal, mechanized. Like gears locking into place. Then a soft hum, low, mechanical. The hum of ventilation turning on. May ran to the door, jiggled the knob. "It's sealed," she screamed. Eleanor stepped into the room, heart slamming against her ribs. No windows, just concrete, rotting furniture. A mattress chains a drain. This wasn't a basement, it was a holding cell. "You were never supposed to find me," Lila whispered, collapsing against the wall. "This room, it's rigged." "What do you mean?" Eleanor asked. Lila coughed. "I've heard them reset it a dozen times. The vent system, it fills with something, not gas, worse, it scrambles your head, makes you forget. You won't die. You'll just forget why you came, who you are." She pointed toward the ceiling. "It's how they make you disappear without killing you." Eleanor's knees gave out. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't closure. This was the final layer of the lie. They had been allowed to get this far, led here, because whoever was running this, whoever was still cleaning up Gerald's old messes, knew that if Eleanor disappeared now, it would bury the story for good. No witnesses, no tapes. Just an old woman who cracked, took a dog and a girl, and wandered off into a building due for demolition. The world would move on. It always did. And then the power went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The hum died. The vent hissed. Then silence. Bear barked once, then twice, then launched at the far wall and began scratching. Hard. Not the door. The wall beside it. Concrete crumbled beneath his claws. "What's he doing?" May cried out. Eleanor squinted in the dark and then saw it. The corner of the wall was hollow. Not real stone, a panel. She crawled toward it, fingers fumbling, and found the latch. Inside, a crawl space, just wide enough for the dog. And maybe May. "I don't care if it collapses," Eleanor muttered. "You go, both of you, I'm staying with her." But Lila grabbed her wrist. "No, you go with her," she said, eyes locking onto Eleanor's like iron hooks. "You get those tapes out, you finish it. I just got you back." Lila smiled, weak and tired. "You got May. That's enough." Eleanor and May climbed in. Bear turned to look back at Lila. She nodded at him once, and Bear, who had waited 12 years to find her, whined low, then followed. Behind them the panel shut. The crawlspace grew tighter, colder. They crawled for what felt like miles, until light. A vent shaft cracked open near the edge of a field. The sky above was bleeding gold. Morning. They were out. Minnie. False peace. They collapsed in the wet grass. May sobbed into Eleanor's shoulder. They had escaped. They had the tapes. They had the proof. But then, May's phone buzzed. A new text. Unknown number. She opened it, hands shaking. No message. Just a photo. Leela. Back. In the room, eyes swollen. Nose bleeding. And behind her, a man in a judge's robe, smiling. When everything falls apart, only one thing keeps them going. Eleanor vomited in the motel sink, dry heaving, hands braced on porcelain, her stomach long empty but still trying to reject the horror she'd swallowed. In the other room, May sat on the bed, motionless, phone still glowing, the photo still open, Lila's swollen eyes. The judge's smirk, the silent promise behind the threat. We see you, we know, we own you. Bear stood between them, tail stiff, unmoving, like he was waiting for a command no one could give, because no one knew what to do. It's my fault, Eleanor finally whispered. No one argued because it was true. She had waited. She had doubted. She had begged logic to overwrite instinct, and now Lila was in that room again. Alone. Like she had been for years. I buried her twice, Eleanor muttered, eyes glazed. Once in memory, once in silence. May looked up, pale and shaking. He wants us to run. Eleanor nodded. And part of me wants to, she said. But if we run now, we lose everything. Reveal. The tapes weren't enough. She opened the box of tapes again. Her hands touched the last one, the one they hadn't played yet. There was no label, just a torn piece of masking tape marked with the number 7. She slid it into the player. Lila's voice came through, slow, deliberate, older. If this is being heard, it means I failed, or it means you're close. Either way, listen. He has friends in robes, in uniforms, in pulpits, people who sit behind desks and sign forms and say, there's nothing to be done. That's how the system survives, by looking like the system. But there's a hole in their shield. He called it the vault, some private server, not on the network, not hackable. It's physical. They keep recordings, proof, insurance. It's hidden where no one will look, inside the courthouse. Under the judge's bench, and the password, Lila paused, is Bear's microchip number. Eleanor dropped the tape player. It clattered to the floor. The sound echoed like a shot. Bear lifted his head. Slowly, Eleanor knelt beside him and felt for the scar on his neck, the one from when they chipped him. It was never about finding his owner. It was about what he remembered, what he carried. They didn't just let. Bare live, they planted him. He had been the fail-safe, a ticking memory bomb. He'd belonged to Gerald once, then vanished. Someone chipped him, hid data, used his loyalty to lead Eleanor here. And now, he was their only way to unlock the truth. But they had to go back to the courthouse, to where it all started. May shook her head violently. They want us to go back. I know, Eleanor said, barely breathing. They'll kill her. I know that too. Then why even... Eleanor's eyes met hers, hollow, burning, because I'd rather die trying to get her out than live knowing I let her die again. Bear walked forward and gently placed his paw on Eleanor's lap, as if to say, then let's go. The motel lights flickered. A car engine roared outside. May rushed to the window, then froze. Black SUV, tinted. Windows, 3 men in suits, no markings, no plates. They were out of time. They break into the courthouse, they find the vault. And what's on the server? It doesn't just take down Gerald, it burns the whole damn system to the ground. They didn't. Sneak in. They stormed in, through the back of the courthouse while the city slept under its delusions. Eleanor wore her late husband's jacket, stiff with old war creases. May held Bear's leash like a lifeline. The dog led without hesitation. They had one shot. One shot before those men in the SUV realized they'd already left. One shot before the girl in the cell paid the price. The courtroom was dark, empty. Lila's trial had taken place in courtroom 2B. Eleanor had stood here when Bear revealed the photos. When Gerald's mask cracked, now she stood in that same room staring at the judge's bench, at the polished wood that had hosted decades of lies. May found the latch first, a panel beneath the bench, hidden in the shadow of the flagpole. She pried. It opened steel keypad, digital screen. Enter. Passcode. Eleanor knelt beside Bear, found the chip scanner in her bag. She pressed it against the scar behind his ear. The screen blinked. ID 7416002 AVX01. She typed it in. The keypad clicked. The bench trembled, a hiss of hydraulics. Then the floor opened. The vaultite wasn't a vault, it was a chamber, a room beneath the courtroom, airlocked, lit by a pale blue glow. Walls lined with old hard drives, each labeled with barcodes and initials. A table sat in the center. On it, a black monitor. Still running, still recording, still listening. Bear growled once. A single file blinked on the screen. Last log, August 12th, 2023. Delivery, L31. Eleanor clicked it open. The video loaded. Loop. The deliveries were being watched. The footage showed a holding cell, concrete, drain in the floor. Lila, shackled, bleeding from her wrists. In the room with her, Gerald, and a woman in judicial robes. Laughing, tugged Gerald. She bit me again. Judge, she's fire like her mother. Gerald, we can't keep her much longer. The younger one's ready. Judge, the girl? Gerald, her daughter. May, she's prettier, cleaner. Judge, then make the switch. Eleanor collapsed backward. It was a pipeline Lila had been held while they conditioned May to forget, to obey, to become the next product. And now that they'd escaped, the cycle had to break or burn. Other files loaded automatically. More footage. Dozens. Children in cells. Drugged. Beaten. Interviewed like test subjects. Men in suits. Women in robes. Laughter. Money changing hands. And over it all, a voice, Eleanor. Recognized, Gerald. Not screaming, not angry, just calm. These are unwanted lives, unclaimed, forgotten. We give them purpose. Reveal. Lila wasn't the only one. May clicked through files, name after name. Each one someone missing. Each one declared runaway, drowned, accident. Each one filed under property. One entry stopped them cold. L32. Bennett, Leela, status transferred, unknown facility. Unknown? She's not dead, May said. They moved her. Eleanor hit record. She began uploading every file to encrypted drives, to multiple cloud backups, to the press, to the world, and then she activated the stream. Live from inside the system. The screen flashed. Live from inside the courthouse, the files they tried to bury. Footage rolled, Gerald's face, the judge, the children, May crying, Lila screaming, Bear snarling, the sea. Truth? Alarms blared above them. Sirens in the street, boots on marble floors. May turned to Eleanor, eyes wide. They're coming. Eleanor nodded. I want them to. She opened the final panel on the wall, a large red switch. Manual override, May whispered. For what? Eleanor smiled. Not with joy, with vengeance. For exposure. She flipped the switch. All courtroom. Monitors blinked to life. Hallways, lobbies, offices. Every screen in the building played the vault feed. Judges watching in horror. Clerks screaming, lawyers dropping their coffee and phones. And in the parking lot, Gerald slammed the SUV door, too. Late twist, Bear strikes first. He charged into the building, not out of control. Not wild-trained, straight toward Gerald. May chased after him, Eleanor right behind. The lobby flooded with officers, half frozen, half panicking. Bear locked onto Gerald and stopped 10 feet away, ears up, teeth bared, waiting for one signal. Just one. Gerald lifted a gun. May screamed. Eleanor stepped forward, and Bear moved. He didn't kill Gerald. He didn't need to. He ripped the chip reader from Gerald's belt and dragged it back to Eleanor. The final piece. The master key. It blinked. Green unlocking full database. Lena accessed a folder labeled Archive Red List. Names: Over 400 on every child who had ever vanished under Gerald's reign, every name the system forgot, except one, Lila's, marked, transferred to Client 0, location sealed, and below it, Client 0, Federal Protection, Judge S. Reinhardt, ID locked. May stared at it. They moved her into protection? Eleanor blinked. Not protection, possession. The doors burst open, news crews, activists, attorneys, flashing lights, screaming voices. It was done. It was out. But then, one last twist. May's phone buzzed, a video message. No sender. She hit play. Lila, filmed in a clean hospital room, eyes sunken, but alive. She leaned forward into the camera and whispered, "He's not the head, he's the decoy. You've only scratched the surface. Don't trust the man with the dog tag tattoo." Then the feed cut. Eleanor turned to Bear. She had never checked his underside. She lifted his collar, and on the underside of his left leg, hidden beneath fur, a small tattoo. Dog tags, military issue, and the initials S.R. Judge Reinhardt. It was never about Gerald. It was never just about saving Lila. Now they have to decide, expose the network, or vanish with what they know. The world thought Gerald was the end. Headlines called him the mastermind, a lone predator, a corrupted enforcer who finally slipped. But Eleanor knew better. So did Bear. So did May. Because in a locked room beneath the courthouse, behind one last firewall, Eleanor had found the folder. Project Heimdall, a government seal, dozens of files. Every one of them marked Active Asset S. Reinhardt, Judge Samuel Reinhardt, publicly beloved, privately untouchable. The real architect. Gerald, he was the bait. Reinhardt, the architect of an invisible adoption pipeline, cloaked in law, and black ink. Bear hadn't been dumped. He was placed, chipped with half the password, tattooed with Reinhardt's code, trained to guide Eleanor just far enough to make it look like a win, because the illusion of justice is more powerful than justice itself. But they made one mistake. They let May live. And May, she recorded everything. In a final live stream, Eleanor appeared alone, eyes hollow, voice steady. "They'll say we got him, that it's over, that we're safe now. They're lying. The system doesn't purge predators, it promotes them. Look deeper. Ask why the man who trained my dog has never been named, and if you find him, run, or burn it all." The screen cut to black. Bear sitting at the foot. Serve Lila's empty hospital bed. Staring at the camera, behind him, a shadow moves. Tall, male, tattooed wrist, watching. Still watching. You don't heal from monsters. You learn their scent. Eleanor disappeared 6 weeks later. No obituary, no funeral, just gone. May told reporters she didn't know where she went. Privately, she knew exactly where. Montana, a cabin with no address. A girl once broken, now. Building encrypted servers out of salvage. A dog who never left her side. Lila was never found again, but May still checks hospitals, still runs image scans, still looks into the eyes of strangers. Some days she swears she sees her, always walking away. Bear is older now, slower, but still vigilant, still dreaming in sounds that only he remembers. Some nights he wakes up growling at nothing. But Eleanor knows it's not nothing, because after the files went public, the names didn't vanish. They shifted, rebranded, relocated, the machine slowed. But it didn't die. Like rot, it went underground. So Eleanor built something new, not a courtroom, a network, anonymous, global, run by survivors. May handles digital exposure. Bear watches the doors. And Eleanor? She trains others, women with scars and fire in their lungs, men who saw something once and never forgot. A coalition of ghosts. They call themselves Sable. Silent archive of buried lives exposed. A young woman knocks on the cabin door, shaking, carrying. A file. Eleanor opens it. The woman speaks 3 words. "I found him." Eleanor glances at Bear. He stands. He remembers that name. He remembers the scent. Eleanor nods. "Then let's begin." Some monsters don't hide under beds. They hide behind gavels, in uniforms, on ballots, but the worst ones, Smile when you thank them. We're not here to fight them in the light. We're here to drag them out of the dark.